if you could talk a little bit about your journey and your experiences through work and how you came to be the CEO of the Presbyterian Home for Children.
Absolutely. So I did grow up in Meridian, Mississippi. I went to school at University of West Florida in Pensacola. People ask, did you study on the beach? Like a little bit, but I got my accounting degree there and a minor in finance. And then I had an opportunity to go with Arthur Young, which would later become Ernst & Young.
Yep.
And so got my CPA. Then I had opportunity to go to Energen, which owned Alagasco, Diversified Energy Holding Company, and in the tax department. And so I spent 25 years between Energen and Alagasco. Most of that was in tax. Most of that was director of tax for both companies.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the opportunity to become the controller of Alagasco. So kind of jumped the tax gate. Most tax people get stuck in tax.
Yeah, I think when most people think of CPA, it's mostly just sticking with the tax on your computer, and
right.
But you've had a journey. It started off as a CPA, but your journey has been
so.
Awesome.
I don't think I slept a week when I found out I was going to be the next controller of Alagasco, and then so I did that for 2 years, and then the next 2 years I was still the controller, but I was at a direct responsibility for a third of operations, which then I didn't sleep for another week.
Yeah.
But then I, ultimately kind of got this thing figured out. But ultimately spent 25 years there. Of course, Alagasco is now Spire.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to tell people I still bleed blue. Alagasco now I bleed orange because of Spire. And actually, Spire came and spent 2 days here on our campus with trucks and chainsaws, and really did an amazing job. I actually washed down tiny homes and the bigger cottages. It was an amazing, and we have other volunteers, but it was fun to have,
some of your alma mater back
here.
Yeah,
my former team back.
Yeah. And I understand that Spire will do that kind of every year.
They do. It's called A Day for Good.
Yeah.
And so that was just really, and I had, like I said, people that I'd worked with, and they were here. So I had an opportunity to be COO at a private equity company, and I did turn it down for an opportunity to be CFO of UCP of Greater Birmingham, which is, of course, now United Ability.
Yeah.
So I had opportunity to work with Dr. Gary Edwards, Dr. E.
If you could take us through that thought process of saying no to the private equity and taking on the role at United Ability.
Wow. One of the most difficult decisions of my life.
Yeah.
It was an incredible opportunity in this private equity. And he wanted a commitment, obviously, for 8-9 years. And I saw this other opportunity at United Ability that was brought to me by Brian Beta, who was the incoming chair of the board, and also as chair of the Suki Foundation, and a partner at Warren Averett. But he brought me this other opportunity. And so really was, did I want to work in private equity for 8 or 9 years and then do this when this was right in front of me?
Yeah.
Because I really knew that I wanted to serve at some point humanity.
So you were attracted to that opportunity and knew that eventually you wanted to get into roles that were.
And I think it started through United Way.
Yeah.
And I was a United Way exec. And then I ended up on the board of Workshops, Inc. There in Avondale.
Yeah.
But I had to say yes and I had to say no. So I made the decision to go and work with Dr. Edwards.
Yeah. So you had a calling there. Where you kind of felt it from within,
yeah,
a calling to go and work in that industry and in this community that
right.
we're in.
So of course, I guess it's been 1.5 years or so. He passed away, and amazing individual.
Yeah, he's really done a lot for the community here in Alabama.
Yeah, and to be able to work alongside him and to see him, behind the scenes and in action, just a solid man of integrity, but he didn't know the word no or we can't do that, and the biggest heart ever. So he clearly, I've had some incredible mentors in my life, but he is definitely one of those. So CFO of United Ability. And it wasn't too long after that Dr. Edwards brought me another problem to solve. So he was on the board of what's called the Alabama Family Trust. This is a nonprofit, is a pooled special needs trust that was created under the Alabama statute. And at the time, they were in need of financial leadership. So Dr. Edwards was on the board, and another tribute to him in that, here he has his own organization, but he was such a part 20 plus years of being on the board of this other nonprofit with a different mission, but it was improving the lives of those with disabilities.
Yeah.
So I ended up with two jobs. I'm the CFO of United Ability, and then the Chief Taxation Officer of the Alabama Family Trust. So 2 boards, 2 executive directors. So, did that for a while, but I really wanted one job.
Yeah. Kind of being pulled thin a little bit.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I ultimately decided to go with the Alabama Family Trust. And then but I worked hard to bring the former CFO of United Ability back.
Yeah.
So they were in great shape, and I started down a path with the Alabama Family Trust. And just a little bit about them was, in addition to being CFO, I was Director of Community Relations. So if I was on a radio interview, I could use that title.
Yeah.
Instead of a CFO, with like, you should be hanging out with banks.
Yeah, exactly. We're your P&Ls.
Exactly. So what this is it's a nonprofit that is able to protect the assets of individuals with disabilities, so that they are able to still be eligible for Medicaid and core government assistance.
Yep.
That without that special needs trust, just by having the assets, even though they have the disability, they would not qualify.
Yeah.
So, a perfect example would be, let's say you have a child that has cerebral palsy, and it was a result of a medical malpractice. Okay, so now there's a lawsuit. So if that settlement is put with the Alabama Family Trust, and nobody could do it cheaper, no bank or any place else, in trust, then Medicaid, they see it, but they ignore it.
Yeah.
So then Medicaid is now paying for these surgeries in Houston and everything that's going on. Now you've got the settlement money to come on top and improve quality of life for the rest of their life, instead of burning through all of these settlement assets with all the trips to Houston, et cetera, and then they have nothing. And then now they're dealing with that.
We've had an opportunity to speak with Anita Kelly as well, and they do the ABLE savings plan, which is kind of similar.
It is
some
similar.
regards.
It is similar, and what I would say, there's things that and I'm not an attorney, but there are things that the Alabama Family Trust can do that ABLE is not able to do, and there's limits there.
Yeah.
Where there's not limits over here.
Gotcha.
So, I would recommend you explore.
You need to know the finances.
You really do.
I mean, you can't go through and find out that you're not eligible for the services because you have $2,001 in your bank account, some months out of the year or something like that. So you have to be aware of those. But so you've started working, and I'd like to congratulate you on the work at United Ability. And, when you went on to the family trust there, and leaving United Ability, they're still doing great. My aunt goes to United Ability. We're going tomorrow to see the doctor there, the Link Point Center. And if I remember correct, you kind of introduced Secretary of Labor
Fitzgerald, Washington.
Mr. Washington and Dr. Gary
To Dr. Edwards.
To Dr. Edwards.
I did. So Fitzgerald, Secretary of Washington, a personal friend of mine, and I arranged for a meeting down in Montgomery. Dr. Edwards pretty much knew everybody, but he just didn't happen to know Fitzgerald. So we met, and I think that's kind of part of, wearing the team jersey.
Yeah.
I wore the team jersey for Energen, Alagasco, United Ability, Alabama Family Trust. And so, what are how can I help them succeed? So I introduced the two of them, and out of that came a couple of things. One, this disability expo on employment.
Yep. We were able to be there this past year.
And I was at the first one, which was held at the club.
Okay.
But yes, I saw that.
Yeah. And that was the first time I met Mr. Fitzgerald there.
And he has a passion, and he wanted to see how there were ways to open up opportunities for those with a disability, employment opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, there's no one else better for you to meet than Dr. Edwards. So it was total win-win on both.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that came out of it is the governor came to United Ability. So that was the first time in history that a governor had come there. So, I've got amazing friends at, United Ability and the Alabama Family Trust. And,
we just don't know how far, one act can go and the bowling ball effect of that. And as long as you're on the same team, like you mentioned, you just try and do everything possible.
Sure.
To go. So take us through then how from the Alabama Family Trust to Presbyterian Home for Children.
So as I was at the Alabama Family Trust, I was working with a lot of nonprofits. So the ARC, Exceptional Foundation, UCP or Greater Huntsville, just Easter Seals. I mean, just kind of everybody. But I guess that calling, I wanted to be more on the front line of being able to impact, I thought, those with disability. But what opened up was an opportunity here at the Presbyterian Home for Children where, the president probably for most of the history really was Presbyterian ministers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an act of faith for the board and myself to take this step to, we're going to take a Alagasco controller who has a calling and has a heart of mercy and compassion and give me a shot at being president.
Yeah.
And so I'm in my 4th year, and it's been one of the most incredible journeys of my life. But I can say that all these teams on the way helped prepare me for this opportunity.
And they're continuing, like you said, Spire's coming out every year to help out here and there.
Absolutely.
And in your first few years here, you've been able to continue the services for the individuals that are at the core, what you do, and build and start to expand some other services.
Exactly. So, one of the first things I wanted to do, programs is number one. Mm-hmm. And that's what should be in all nonprofits. That's why we were formed, to take care of children. So, but we were an older organization, so I set out to raise the bar on the support, accounting, HR, IT, development, so that they can succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was because programs is not my background. My right hand is Felicia Story. She's been here now 36 years. It's been her only job, well respected throughout this world and with DHR and so forth. And in 2020, she was chosen as one of 25 women who shaped the state. And then 21 top 50 over 50 by positive maturity. So she's my right hand. And so we worked together.
Mm-hmm.
And but one of the things we needed to do on the programs was go after additional accreditations.
Okay.
So in 2017, we ended up getting the Eagle accreditation. It's under the United Methodist Association. It's only faith-based accreditation for ministry to children and senior adults, senior living
Yeah.
in the world. We got that. I didn't have anything to do with it. I just got the award. I just stepped on the stage. But then I have since joined that commission, and we have since been reaccredited. But then we also got accredited by the Council on Accreditation, and now has a new name called Social Current. But it's the good housekeeping seal of approval for nonprofits, and it took us 2 years to get it.
Yeah.
But all of that was to raise the bar in programs and in support. But ultimately, the winners are the children that we're serving.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's in order to get that medal, whether that's an Olympic medal or an accreditation, you have to go through the work. And like you said, that kind of raises the water. And so the boats get a little higher in every department. And
Exactly.
The structure and the organization just flows a little bit better. So it's almost like a benchmark.
It is.
Well, I'll call out the state for our provider that I have for my aunt. And I'll say, hey, I want you guys to come through and put a test on me just so I can see how we're doing, before our official certification. So all that work that goes into getting that recognition, that certification, helps, like you mentioned, the women and the children in the end.
Absolutely. And so now I've already had 2 opportunities to be a peer reviewer. So I did a peer review in Mississippi and also in Florida to help. One was a reaccreditation. One was a brand new accreditation.
Yeah.
But, to be dropped in the middle of a nonprofit after you've looked at their documents, but then you're dropped in there for a couple of days and you're trying to help them, that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
But no question is it help us.
Yeah. You pick up a few things as you go along.
You see great ideas and, you can steal those ideas.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with stealing a good idea.
Well, they say the best artists mimic or, something.
So,
but to be able to go and do that and the connections that you make along the way.
Oh, absolutely.